guys, it's Eric G from Around the House, and I am thrilled to announce that our massive back catalog, nearly 1,900 episodes packed with home improvement tips, DIY hacks, and expert advice, is now available for free. Dive into years of inspiration to tackle on your next project. And just a heads up, some podcast players limit how far back you can go. So if you can't find it all, just head straight over to our website, aroundthehouseonline.com, and listen to every episode there. Don't miss out. Start binging today. And thanks for tuning in to Around the House.
Everybody stop what you're doing, please!
When it comes to remodeling and renovating your home, there is no better show on your radio. This is Around the House with Eric G.
Where's the hammer?
From your back fence to the sidewalk, Eric will tell you how to keep it all in tip-top shape while helping you save a buck while doing it. If you like DIY projects, it takes a lot of practice to get good at it, and Eric is here to guide the way.
Is it on the... Go up on the other floor. Somebody go up there and stop the hammering.
All that and more on the fastest 2 hours of home improvement radio.
These are the wrong plans. These are the old plans. Oh.
Welcome to
Stop it!
Around the House with Eric G.
Welcome to Around the House with Eric G. This is your home improvement source every single weekend. Thanks for joining us. I'm Eric G.
I'm Dane Vodder.
Well, Dane, we're doing our social distancing thing again here today. Thanks for being on the air again, brother.
Absolutely. Hopefully, come the next week or so, we'll be getting more back to normal.
We'll get you out of quarantine jail.
Oh yeah, just the precautions.
Hey man, we got to play it safe. We got to play by the rules on this one. So it's all good. It's what we do. So, well, hey, thanks for joining us, everybody. This is a 2-hour show about home improvement, and we are here to help you out. Today, we're going to tackle a little bit of an interesting subject. I wanted to dive into renting versus landlord. I wanted to talk about some of those common issues between being a renter and, of course, being a landlord, and talk about both sides of the coin because, well, there's definitely two sides of that coin. And, Dan, you're a renter. You've dealt with this yourself.
Absolutely, and you're a homeowner, so we're going to kind of be able to tackle the two different perspectives.
Yeah, and it's an interesting one because, you know, there's a lot of people out there that are renters that vilify the landlord. There's a lot of landlords that vilify the renters. So I have been both. And I want to talk about that as well today because I think there's a lot of things that we can talk about, especially with all the COVID rules out there because there's been, a moratorium in most areas. I think it's been a national one, but even a statewide one on evictions, which that is another two-sided coin because, if you're a renter and you haven't hit your rent payment in 6 months, maybe 8 months, 10 months. I don't know how long it's been. That bill is coming due.
Yeah, that's not just free rent. You aren't staying there for free. It's basically you're prolonging your payments, but that's all going to come due. And I have a feeling that for more people than not, that's going to come due quickly or at least quicker than you might be expecting.
Yeah, within the next month, I think a lot of that's going to come due is my guess. Now, the landlord's been bearing the brunt of that because most landlords out there of single-family homes, at least, when you're in apartments and big complexes, a lot of times those are big corporations. But if you're in a single-family home or a small duplex or something like that, or even a 3 or 4-plex, many times that's owned by a person out there who's the landlord. And there might be a company that's managing it, but many times they're making payments on that property as well. So That's kind of put them in an interesting situation because now the landlord's going, man, I haven't been paid in 7 or 8 months, and I've been funding this place out of my own savings if they had it. Or they've been talking to the bank themselves saying, hey, I don't have any rental income coming off this because my 2 or 3 tenants aren't paying either. And that's been an interesting discussion to see how this is going to play out because I think two things are going to happen if I was going to wave my magic wand and make a prediction here and get out the crystal ball. I got a feeling there's a lot of people out there that even though things were delayed, they were not putting in that money off to the side to be saved up so they could make that balloon payment at the end of this deal. That's my guess. What do you think?
No, I would have to agree with you, especially in times right now where, a lot of people may not be having jobs or whatnot. A lot of people need that money to survive and get by and pay for food and gas and kids and daycare or anything like that.
Yep. And so,
they use that money. So I have a feeling that, people probably put a little bit into savings, but not enough to where they're going to be able to pay these bills when they come due.
I mean, they could have a $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 rent payment that's due. And if not, they're going to get booted. And I think what we're going to see is the next phase of this is just a massive overwhelming of the evictions department in your local government, because you're going to see landlords going, hey, 30 days, you got to pay it up. And when it doesn't happen, you're going to see that stuff happening. And that's going to put a lot of people in a bad spot. And I think what's going to happen is even though that many of these people that have been renters have been put in a position where they, their work shut down. They weren't working. They're, if they were in the music industry, it just wasn't happening. There was nothing to be made in their career path. It was just shut down. I think that's where you're going to see some of these things kind of fall out because, when you're going to go be a renter and go rent another place, you've got to give all of those background checks to, okay, what was your rental history at your last place?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any felony convictions? All those different things that they're going to do on you as a background check. And when you're not going to pass that, it's going to be an interesting problem because I think from the renter point of view, it's going to put us in a bad position where I think there's going to be a lot of renters who are going to have a hard time finding a place. And maybe it's just going to be some of those big apartment complexes that are trying to fill people up that might be a little more lenient than maybe some of these private, homeowner landlords that are really doing their due diligence to put the right people in there. And I think that could be another issue that I see pop its ugly head here in the next 6 months, because if you're getting evicted, you're going to end up getting kicked out of there at some point, and then that eviction goes on your kind of rental record here in the U.S., and that's where I think another problem occurs.
Well, and I'm a little worried about the ripple effect that that'll have down the line. So say you're a landlord and you had to evict somebody because, they're 6 months back on rent and they can't pay it.
Yep.
Totally understandable. But then you have to look at the pool of people that are then looking for homes. There are going to be a lot of people that were in the same situation somewhere else. And do you really want to relive that and bring somebody in who's had that kind of issue before? Because honestly, I have a feeling a lot of people are going to have this issue.
I think so too. And I think that's going to be a big problem. And so I think that's going to have to work its way out. I don't have a solution for that.
Yeah.
But I think that's where the next ripple effect's going to happen. And you're going to see, just like there is in many states with the unemployment department and the DMV and that kind of stuff, you're going to see a ripple effect there where, unfortunately, it's going to take a landlord who wants to get somebody out of a place. It's going to take them 4 months just to get a hearing to be able to do that, because I don't think they're ready for that yet. And that's going to be the next ugly part of this. But that's not really all we want to talk about in the show today.
Oh, no.
I wanted to kind of hit the elephant in the room to begin with, because I think that's going to be one of the bigger problems that we see here in the next month. But, coming from a renter's point of view, some of the biggest questions we get from renters, and I will say most of our show is homeowners, but there's a lot of people that are listening because they want to be a homeowner soon, and they're a renter now, and they're striving to buy their first home or buy another home. Some of the things that I think that come up are how do you deal with landlords in an effective manner when, there's lots of great landlords out there. There's lots of super cheap landlords. I mean, I've been ripped off by a landlord before, did everything right, handed the house over great, still wouldn't get me my deposit back. And that $2,000, I was going to have to fight it in court, and it was going to cost me more to fight it. And quite frankly, I had to write it off, which, that just said about the integrity of that person, but you just have to kind of walk away sometimes. And that's a lot of money to walk away from, but I've been burned as well. So I want to talk here about where's these fine lines to go between a renter and a landlord. Because in most areas, to be honest, some major metropolitan areas will have kind of renter assistance or advocacy groups, to sit there and help this, that, will help fight these kind of things. But I think those systems are going to be way overloaded here. So I think there's going to be a lot of people that those resources aren't going to be available to when they used to be there.
Absolutely. And I know we'll talk about this in the segments to come, but I feel that communication really is key between the tenant and the landlord, a good open line of communication and an understanding of what's expected.
It is. And I think the other thing is just starting to figure out what's from a renter point of view, the first thing after that communication is what is going to be the hill you want to die on. And what I mean by is, what do you want to make a big deal about? And what do you need to just walk away from and go, I don't own the place. I have to get with them on the maintenance. And if they don't want to take care of it, that's going to be their issue. And so many times as a renter, it's your job to notify them. But many times it's hard to get recourse to get some of the basic things, the simple things fixed that are more cosmetic. And we come up in the next segment here. I want to talk more about that because, there's many times that they'll be, this room wasn't painted correctly, or this was poorly, workmanship was done poorly. And quite frankly, some of those things there's not much you can do as a renter compared to that landlord, because those are things that are cosmetic and aren't kind of in that more health, safety, and welfare that you're going to win that battle. So when we come back, I want to talk about kind of the renter's rights that you have and what to do about it. We'll do that just as soon as Around the House returns. I want to introduce you to our new sponsor on Around the House with Eric G. I absolutely despise having to carry water softener salt and load it up. Well, if you're like me, then I have a solution for you. Check out Natural Soft. Natural Soft solves those hard water issues using a catalytic process. And when you combine it with one of their filtration systems, you now have a complete water treatment system for you and your family. For clean, soft water you can depend on from Natural Soft, head to solosalescompany.com. Check the podcast show notes for details and make sure and tell them Eric G sent you. Welcome back to Around the House with Eric G. This is where we talk home improvement every single weekend. Thanks for joining us. I'm Eric G.
I'm Dane Vaughter.
Well, I want you to find us over on Facebook, because that is one of our easy places to find us, where we have content that comes up every single week. And that's Around the House with Eric G. That's just where we do a lot of social media. Of course, we've got, Instagram and Twitter, and I don't do much Twitter, but LinkedIn. All of those are great places to find more additional content and some interesting stuff. Like we had some recalls this last week. There's a lot of different things that were happening on just on Facebook, which is Around the House with Eric G.
Yeah, and we also have a private group on Facebook. It's called Around the House Nation. That is where you can ask to be a member and share off your DIY projects, show up some memes, have some fun, communicate with some people. Also, if you want to really go to the heart of where we are, we have our social media on Facebook, but we have aroundthehouseonline.com. That is our website. So we have the store there. That's where you can find the podcast. You can do. Eric does a blog. Also, our numbers here in the studio, if you have any DIY questions, we'd love to answer them, and you can call us 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Our number, 971-233-8992.
You got it. We've got our store up there, too, so you can order some swag from Around the House with Eric G, and that's a fun place to go. As well as look at the projects up there, because that projects is where we've been going. And I had Portland granite marble in my house this week, installing those Corian and Dura porcelain countertops, and we'll talk more about that later. But oh my gosh, these things are stunningly beautiful and super durable. So we'll talk more about that in another show, but we'll talk a little bit more about it later, because now I got that faucet installed finally that we all been talking about. So
that thing's gorgeous.
Thanks, man. It's going to be a lot of fun enjoying this kitchen and get this done, and then I've got so many more projects after we get the rest of this stuff wrapped up. So you can always check it out on Facebook. I'll be sharing pictures throughout the process over there, as well on aroundthehouseonline.com. Well, we've been talking here about, just about renting versus being a landlord and kind of the discussions about that. And we started talking off here about, what do you need to worry about as a renter on getting things fixed? And this is kind of how I have always thought about it. And there's a lot of different rules, and check your local state and local governments for rules because they're different all over the country. What could be great in New York is completely different in Philly, and what's different in Chicago versus Portland, Oregon versus Seattle. Everybody has their own rules on that. And it's something that you need to take a look and see what your options are. But so many people out there will go, man, I've got maintenance issues that aren't getting taken care of. Now, there are things that you can do to force your landlord to take care of what I would call the health, safety, and welfare things. What I mean is, do you have heat? Do you have a refrigerator that works? Does the toilet work? Do the sinks work? Are the basic needs functioning correctly? Those are the first ones that you always have a right to battle through. And those are always good things to take care of. If you've got mold and you've got mold growing in the wall and you clean it with some mold stuff and it's not under control, that's, again, in that same kind of thing of, okay, you've got a health issue. And those are things you always want to make sure that you are communicating in a very written kind of manner so you can document it with your landlord. And I'm sure, Dane, you've run into these things as well as a renter.
Absolutely. And it like you said, it's do you have everything that you would need to live in a home, running water and whatnot. And that's my question really is say you want to get something fixed, or you need like you've got you busted a pipe over the winter or something, whatever it may be, and the landlord's not getting it done. At what point or what recourse do you have to just say, okay, I'm going to fix this? And then can you write it off to your landlord?
Here's the problem is that since you don't own the building, in almost every lease agreement, they say that the renter can't do repairs to the unit. And the problem is if you do that repair now, you all of a sudden are responsible for that repair.
Mm-hmm. And
unfortunately, my first thing would be to, of course, get a hold of the landlord, get them on it, get them, if you got to send them a certified letter that, hey, this has got to get fixed. But the first thing I would do as a renter would be to understand after you've notified the landlord and, of course, stopped whatever the issue is. If you had to turn water off to something, make sure you turn it off. Do the basics to control the situation. Now, you might not have the tools or anything to control the situation, but do what you can. If it's a main water leak, if you called the water department to turn off the water to the building to make sure that, if no one's getting taken care of things, if it's a gas leak, call the gas company or 911, depending on, what's the situation in your area. Those are things you want to do. But really, understanding what your local rights are as a renter is a big one, too. And there's a lot of different organizations out there, so check online for renters associations or renters rights association to help navigate those kind of things. Because, they
advocates and stuff like that.
Yeah, that typically they have 24 or 48 hours, or they have to start putting you up in a hotel room, depending on where you're located, of course. But there are rights that you have as a renter for them to get these things taken care of. Now, there's also that fine line of, well, the paint doesn't look good, or I have a window leaking and it's tearing the paint up. Well, that's a whole other story that I want people to understand, because if it's creating mold, that's a big deal. And we come back, I want to talk about that really to make sure that we understand this correctly, because there's things that you have to be healthy with, and then there's cosmetic things which you don't have much to talk about. And that's where you run into problems of that gray area where you're becoming just kind of a nuisance to the landlord, which might not get other more important things fixed. We'll talk about that just as soon as Around the House returns.
Hey, this is Farewell Angelina, and you're listening to Around the House with Eric G.
Welcome back to Around the House with Eric G. This is your home improvement source. We're sliding a little Farewell Angelina Christmas cheer in. I'm Eric G.
I'm Dane Vodder. It's after Thanksgiving. We're open season on holiday music as far as I'm concerned.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. And that we're going to embrace that all the way through the end of the year. So we're going to have a good time with that. Well, join us on Facebook, because if we've been watching all the different stuff we've been doing, I've been tackling my projects. We've had some great product recalls up there for people that, there's some stuff that is a little dangerous out there. There's all this different content on Around the House with Eric G, and that's over on Facebook.
Absolutely. And if that's not enough content for you, come to our home base, which is aroundthehouseonline.com. That's where you're going to find, that's the home base for the podcast. You can send us an email there. You can find your Good Day Oregon videos, which is a more visual DIY and a short form kind of medium there for you.
You got it.
And we want to answer your questions, any DIY questions you're thinking about. Man, should I remodel this? What should I do? If you have any sort of decisions to make, we'd love to help you make them. Give us a call here in the studio, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, all across the United States. Our number here is 971-233-8992. You're going to leave us a message. Let us know your name, your project that you're working on, and a good time to call you back. We'll call you back. We'll hit the record button, and we can actually get in depth with helping you with what you're working on.
You got it. You got it. Well, we've been talking today, renting versus being a renter versus a landlord and vice versa, because I wanted to kind of talk about both sides of the coin with this today. And we were talking before I went to break about, picking those battles, making sure that you've got the life safety, welfare, that you're living in a safe place. But some of these things people get so wrapped up in it as a renter, they got to be careful with, because I hate to say this, and this is going to sound a little selfish. If your water bill is paid by the landlord and they're charging you just so much a month for water, and the toilet keeps running and is wasting water, and you've talked to your landlord multiple times about it, there comes that point that you have to sit there and go, is this worth my time fighting this battle when they're paying the water bill anyway? If you've already notified them and said, hey, toilet's wasting water, it's running, there comes a point where you have to just throw your hands up and go, not going to fight that battle.
Well, at that point, as a renter, you've kind of done your due diligence. First of all, you try and keep the toilet from running as best as you can. You aren't allowed to make any repairs on the toilet, so you can't really get in there and diagnose and fix the problem. And you've informed them, especially when they're paying the water bill, like you've covered your bases, and at that point, they'll get to it when they get to it, and if they don't, then they're the ones paying the extra money.
Yep, absolutely. And then maybe when it comes, when your lease is up, maybe it's time to find a better location, a better landlord, but many times that's going to cost you more money. So that's where you've got to kind of weigh out those options. Now, the other thing I want to talk about here before we jump into the landlord side of things is, what modifications can you make? And that's many times there's not much. You might be able to get written permission to paint the walls, but many times they want to paint it back to that drab white that they had to begin with. Or the builder beige.
You know this all too well.
Absolutely. And I've done that.
The last place you lived in. Yeah. I remember you had to repaint the walls white.
Yep. Just take them back to that because that's the way it was. And I was okay with that. That's one of those things that when you're renting, that make sure that you're doing your part to get it back to the way it was. And go ahead.
Here's my question: is if you and we talked about this in between segments. is what if you have a damaged wall or paint that you moved into a place where the paint's peeling and it's really not in good condition. At that point, you should still obviously check with your landlord, but you'll be like, hey, I want to paint this and make this look good and make this an enjoyable space to live in. I want to paint this, and do you care what color it is? Was that how you would go about it?
Yeah, and I do it in an email, so you've got written proof of it. That way there's nothing, no issue with it, And for me, I was frustrated because I went back and repainted those colors, repainted that, and I didn't get a penny back from that landlord because he took me. And so that's one of those things that for me was very frustrating because that house was left in a much better condition than what it was. And it just came to the point that I was going to spend $5,000 to $10,000 of attorney time to come back on $2,000. It just didn't make sense. And so I didn't do it. But, those are the things you got to be careful with. Now, switching over to the landlord side of things, finding good tenants is your first thing as a landlord, and that's one of those things that I think as a landlord you need to be very careful with. You should be doing those background checks. You should be finding out, and what I did when I was a landlord is I actually joined a business group that was a local renters landlord association, basically. It was the local apartment owners association, for the county that I lived in. And what that did is it helped us because they had their own background services. They had their own legal paperwork. They had all the stuff needed with all the lead paint rules and, all the stuff that you have to have for your sign-offs. So you got your paperwork correct. And here's the thing. I tell you what, as a landlord when I was back years ago when I was living in Seattle, it was interesting how the rules kept changing, but you've got to just stay on top of that. And I'll be honest, a lot of people out there that are homeowners now go, I'm going to upgrade my house. I'm going to keep this one. I'm going to rent it out. This is not for the faint of heart. It is a full-time job in your head managing that because here's what happens. And I just want to give you, if you're thinking about becoming a landlord out there, I want you to have 6 months to a year of backup funds to pay the mortgage on that thing when a global pandemic hits or you can't get somebody in there for 6 months or there was such damage to it that you got to pay the mortgage payment to get it back into shape while you work on it. Because these are things that you don't want to have to go, man, I can't afford to make another payment on this thing. I'm going to have a 10-day turn. Well, now you're taking 2 weeks off of work, off your 9-to-5 job to work on the rental. So these are things that I want you really to be careful with. You need to be a landlord, have a really good backup because that way you're good to go. Because sometimes you're going to find a bad tenant, they're going to tear the place up, and it's going to take you a month to put it back together. And I can do a whole radio show on horror stories of tenants taking cabinet doors out of the kitchen and burning them in the fireplace because the heat got turned off. Yeah.
Well, and so I have some of my family are landlords. They own a property. Yeah. Kind of my question, they bought a property to rent it out. Like that was the whole point, but it already had tenants in it.
Sure.
So my family bought the property, and it turns out one of the tenants wasn't so great.
Sure.
And I mean, to the point where once we finally got them out, me and some of my family members, we had to go out there and tear out the hardwoods. We had to, there was so much damage to that unit that we really didn't even know about because we just bought the property.
True, but here's one of the things that you have to do as a landlord as well, and also follow your local codes and things. But to be honest, a good landlord every 6 months is going to go do that scheduled walkthrough. Yep. And I know it is so difficult as a renter to be on that side of things.
It sucks. It does, but it's totally understandable. I just had mine last week.
Yep. Yeah, so there's that walkthrough where you're like, okay, here we go. What's a place look like? But the nice thing with that is your time as a tenant to have that one-on-one with your landlord going, hey, this door doesn't work. Hey, see this over here? The sink's leaking. This is when you can talk about some of those things and write them down. Take notes, document it.
it creates that open line of communication. At least another one that, like we said at the beginning of the show, is the most important thing.
Absolutely.
And I know it can be hard, especially like I'm lucky where I rent. My landlord lives nearby, so I am able to, on a regular basis, be fairly communicable with them. But if you have a landlord that lives in Florida and just bought a property out on the West Coast to rent out, that can be a lot more difficult.
Especially if they're one of those rental associations, like they're a property management company or something. Those can be tough to deal with because all they deal with, and it can be tough. Now, one of the things as a landlord that you've got to do is you got to protect that investment because that is your investment. So you need to understand that is a business tool that you have there, and it needs constant work to stay on top of it. Who's taking care of the lawn? Who's cleaning out gutters if it has gutters? Who's doing, if it's got a septic tank, who's doing the inspections every year or two? Who's maintaining that heating and cooling system? These are all things that maintenance needs to be scheduled. And there are a lot of things too, and I want to talk about this in the next segment coming up here in a few minutes, but I want to talk about some of the products that you can put in. And one of my secrets, and I'll just kind of tease ahead with this, when I was a landlord, is I went in and put in high-quality toilets in every single one of my units because that basically eliminated my plumbing problems of having to deal with a plumber coming out to fix a toilet. When I could solve that problem by putting a good one in, I put in a bunch of Toto toilets in there and took care of it. I've got a lot more tips for you. We'll talk about that just as soon as Around the House returns. Welcome back to Around the House with Eric G. This is your home improvement source every single weekend. I'm Eric G.
I'm Dane Votter.
We're having a good time in here talking landlords, talking renting, talking the whole thing. I did want to give a shout out, though, because we've got a brand new sponsor in the podcast out there. And, I love it when listeners turn into sponsors. And I just want to say thanks to Tom over there at Solo Sales Company, and you're going to hear in the podcast, you're going to hear our sponsor, which is Natural Soft. It is a cool water softener for your home, and you don't have to lug those big bags of salt, so you're going to hear those. And Solo Sales Company, these guys are great, and I like new technology, and this is a great new water filtration and, treatment option for you out there. So get a hold of Tom over there. He was just awarded the Salesman of the Month and the Year for 2020, and he's their only employee, so it's pretty good.
Absolutely. Happy to have them as part of Around the House.
Absolutely. It's just great to have those guys on here. Well, we've been talking landlords today, so you can head over to solosalescompany.com if you want to see. The guy's hilarious. Happy to have him on board, and he's a comedian, I think, as well. So it's good stuff and knows his stuff over there. Well, we've been talking renting versus landlord. And one of the things I wanted to talk about was some of the tips that I can give to landlords out there to make sure that they're doing the smart things in their homes. For instance, like I said, as we went out to break, replacing all those toilets with ones that really work well, like a Toto, or a DXV or one of the higher end toilets, because that's going to save you problems down the road. As well, I'm not a big fan of garbage disposals. Garbage disposals in rentals, and as a renter, I love them. But trying to manage people putting the wrong things down garbage disposals, those can be a headache. So be careful. If you're going to put a garbage disposal in your units, put a really good one that's likely to not clog. That's
absolutely. Well, and also thinking about if it's not upkeep or, upkept, it's just a breeding source for bacteria and also, weird smells and all of that, and some you probably don't want to deal with as a landlord.
Well, and here's the thing too: when you walk around and do your 6-month inspection, you can go through and run some cleaner down through there. They make the great dishwasher. Garbage disposal cleaners. You can drop the pellets down in there, and they foam up and they clean and disinfect the whole thing. As you're doing your walkthrough, you can just check it to make sure it's working. Takes you 30 seconds, and you can do that. So that's a good one there as well. The other one I want to make sure that you're doing that's very important is make sure that you've got a good heating and cooling system in there, depending on what you've got and where you're at. But make sure that that's working correctly, that it's being maintained, and that you've got the ventilation taken care of, because you can have mold going everywhere and you're not in that unit to find out what's going on every 6 months. So make sure that those bathroom fans are on timers, that when they turn the lights on, that they turn on with them, that you've got good ventilation to stop mold and mildew growth. The more you can do with that, as well as reduce the liability and hazard reduction, it's a smart way to go. And putting in good vent fans is an important part of it. And the other part is do what we do here and around the house. Do that house walk around. Make sure you check the outside. Make sure that you don't have any trip hazards and stuff that could get you sued. There are people out there that love to take advantage of somebody even when they're at fault. So you just need to be careful to mitigate any of those hazards. And when in doubt, you can always get a hold of your insurance company. They've got a great, almost everybody that's got rental properties has an insurance company that is set for that, and they have lots of great tips as well to help reduce those risks. But protecting that investment, making sure that you're repairing and remodeling as needed, is a good way to get the right people in there. And Dan, I think you've noticed this too, and as being a renter yourself, what I've done over the years is I made the units a lot nicer when I had those. We started out with them pretty unmaintained for about a decade when I got them. And we turned around and did some nice remodels, put some nice stain-proof carpet. Yes, they make stain-proof carpet that you can't stain now. I'd probably put, luxury vinyl tile in there that can't be hurt without a lot of damage. But making sure you put the right kind of tenant-proof stuff in there. If you make those things really nice, you're going to attract a nicer client that maybe will do a better job of taking care of it than when you are trying to pretend to be a slumlord out there.
Well, absolutely. And if you maintain the upkeep of your home and improve it, you're increasing the quality of the home. Therefore, you're able to charge a higher monthly rent for it, attracting not necessarily, I don't want to generalize things, but attracting a typically better renter.
I mean, here's the thing. If you've got a duplex or a triplex or even a fourplex, or even a small apartment thing where you've got, more than that, if you've got poor quality people in there, and there's all kinds out there, but if you are not doing your job of keeping the drug dealers, the homeless people, the whatever out of there, then it's going to reflect on that property, and you're not going to keep the long-term renters that you want in there. Because
and that drives the value down.
It does, and that's the thing. And quite frankly, if they're coming in and signing a lease, the cheapest thing for you is to re-sign another lease, because you don't have to go back in there, repaint, and do all those things and clean the carpets as much, and those are things that you should be doing too. And I'll be honest, if you put in good carpets and those kind of things as a landlord, I like to see you go in there with a professional team every 6 months or a year and say, hey, we're cleaning your carpets, because getting that dirt out of there is going to keep the carpet from breaking down. And it's a good time to make sure that there's no pets that are making mistakes, or if they've got a pet deposit that they haven't used that up with damage. All of these things can be prevented if you do a lot of that work on the front end, and just follow up and do what's right. That's the big part of it. And one more thing as a landlord that's important too is to keep an eye on all the energy rebates that you have out there. There are plenty of energy rebates out there as you're doing stuff, for insulation, windows, doors, that kind of stuff, that could save you money that you might as well just go ahead and spend. If you're going to be upgrading something, put in the energy efficient water heater, put in that stuff. If it saves you money and you get a little money back, it could be a good business decision for you. And that way you're saving your renters a little bit of money on the utilities that, quite frankly, they're going to have to pay for.
Absolutely. Well, and you'd mentioned earlier that, putting in a nice, good toilet, that's going to save on the water bill. That's an attractive thing for a renter to see.
That's a good point.
Well, and another thing is, as a landlord, it sucks to lose a tenant, and you don't know necessarily what's going to happen from there. But that is your opportunity to really get in that unit and capitalize and update so that you can, maybe charge a little bit more on that next renter.
You got it. Well, that's all we got for this topic. When we come back, we're going to be talking about my top 10 home improvement products that should be discontinued. We'll do that just as soon as Around the House returns.
Hey everyone, this is Jim, producer of the Around the House Show podcast. If you're listening right now, you already know we bring you the best tips, tricks, and expert advice to fix, upgrade, and maintain everything in your home without the headaches or the huge bills. But if you're catching us on the radio or borrowing a friend's phone, you're missing out on new episodes dropping straight to your device every week. So do yourself a favor, hit pause for just a second, grab your phone, and subscribe to Around the House Show on your favorite podcast player. Whether it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube Music, or wherever you listen. It's completely free, and you'll never miss an episode again. Thanks for supporting the show. Now let's get back to making your house work for you.